Hello, and welcome once again to Escaping Dystopia. Today's show is going to be something we don't do very often here, which is talk a little bit about the value proposition of a particular ecosystem and token, and that is going to be the Cosmos Hub and the Atom token. So over the last month or so, we've seen some really interesting price action across the cryptocurrency space. And to bring that point directly, here we see the Atom chart over the last month. Here we see the Ethereum chart over the last month. And here we see the Bitcoin chart over the last month. If you look at these same charts over the last year, you see Atom looking like this over the last year. You see Ethereum looking like this over the last year. And you see Bitcoin looking like this over the last year. So why has Atom done so well? A lot of folks will criticize the tokenomics of the system, essentially because of the architectural decisions that the Atom and Cosmos team took in trying to build out their system. And that's the thing about it, because they didn't really focus on building a token or a coin first or a single blockchain, but in fact tools to build and connect blockchains. And the idea then would be that Atom as a token would facilitate that, because it was built and designed with the notion of that these network effects increase utility. So what has happened over the last few months, years, that people have started to see the potential of cryptocurrencies and how they can actually interact and what it's actually going to take to actually function in the real world. And one of the things that includes that is being able to function at, quote, web scale. Making a bit of a joke, but scaling in general is a question on how would these technologies be able to scale up so you could have, perhaps millions of simultaneous users making tens of millions simultaneous transactions, and how could you keep up? And what we've seen over the last 6 months and the last year really is that Ethereum, with its virtual machine setup, right, its decentralized virtual machine makeup, and its proof of work consensus algorithm, hasn't been able to really keep up with how many people would like to be using it to do these kinds of things. So the question is, how do you scale for this whole network and a whole system? And people have different ideas on that. People have different ideas on a lot of technologies. I'll say real quick, in my background, I'm essentially the kind of person, if I wanted to stop writing code, I would probably try to become something like a data architect, would be something that's a similar position of where I'm at in my career personally. And if I want to stop writing code, which I don't. Now, let me show you how this looks now, because I'm talking a lot about stuff and you're like, well, wait, how does Atom make value? So what happened is they created tools for other people to create other blockchains and connect them together. This interface here, this map of zones, and I'll show you this here. So this map of zones really shows you what actually is happening. So let's go full screen here. This map of zones interface is really one of the single coolest data visualization interfaces for blockchain technology that I've seen. You may have seen Coin Particle, which, let me show you that real quick. Coin Particle is a really, really neat data visualization tool, and it gives a really good look into a lot of tools and what's going on, and I really, really like this kind of stuff. But to understand how Atom accrues value, this map of zones is much, much, much more interesting. Because you have to remember, the Cosmos team focused on building tools to allow others to build blockchains. Each one of these little planets here in this ecosystem is a blockchain. And if you click on them here in this interface, this thing's super neat, it will show you from their perspective what's going on and how things are going. Now the Cosmos here, you see all this traffic. Literally, these are IBC traffic going in and out. 277 different routes between Cosmos and other chains. As you look at some of the other ones here, you can see Juno, which is another big one, and you can see what it's connected to directly, which relayers it has, and how many transactions are being sent back and forth. The other big one, of course, you see Osmosis, how many people have connected to Osmosis. Osmosis will cover when I do my rundown of 2021 dexes. One of the things that makes Osmosis quite a bit different than, say, your Uniswap or your QuickSwap or your PancakeSwap is that what you're doing on Osmosis is literally pulling tokens from full other blockchains. Again, one of the things you need to realize for each one of these, this, Stargaze, right, which actually now is just connected to Juno and Osmosis and Bitcana, but each one of these, all of these, this is Luna, is Terra, what they're connected to. Each one of these is a sovereign blockchain. They're all sovereign. Each one sets their own tokenomics. They have their own DAO. They have all of their own governance. They have their own validators. They can all exist without anyone else. And so Cosmos, Atom, what these folks did is work to build the tools to allow people to build all these other chains. And what the value proposition now is becoming for this, which has always kind of been in the long-term plan, one of the things that you see with this kind of architecture is that if you were a new chain, right, you want to say like you're a new planet over here, if you want to connect to everyone else, it becomes difficult because this shows you here in this 2D interface a little better of how many relayers you would have to set up. You can see here Sif Chain, how many they've got going on, and Osmosis, how many they've got going on. And each one of these, and these two are connected, and these are all the relayers between these chains. But as you start to imagine this ecosystem not being 30 chains connected or 40 chains connected, but tens of thousands of chains and millions of chains. Now the architecture in that sense, then what you have is implemented what they're doing now here, is multi-hop routing. So any new chain built with, again, the tooling that these people are building and updating, which is not quite yet to a 0.5 versioning status for the Cosmos SDK. But what people can do with new chains is they create a new chain, it connects to this chain, right? Just because this is part of the SDK here, you can connect to the Cosmos Hub. Now you maintain one relayer. Now you can come into this chain and multi-hop to anything. So now value, NFTs, any kind of information can be passed from one chain to any chain with the Cosmos Hub as the relayer of relayers, right? And you can then have each one of those in these zones, and so they start to spread out, and you have a formula here for essentially infinite scaling. Because remember, each one of these is a blockchain, 6-second finality, 1,000 or so TPS, depending on how complex the transactions are. So you can now scale infinitely by adding chains and then connecting them via this IBC technology. So people are talking about Cosmos here, and they talk about how it has, an inherent inflation rate, no max supply. If you start to understand that what it needs to be able to do as part of the center of this cosmos, this ecosystem of perhaps millions of blockchains, it also needs to scale infinitely. It needs to be able to represent so much value. You can't really put a limit on how many literal atoms you can have if you want to have an inflationary universe. So the idea that it needs to be deflationary or something like that, no, the inflation rate is actually an economic incentive to get people to stake their atom and then leave it here in the hub holding the whole thing together, for which of course they're rewarded by leaving that value staked as part of the stakeholders. And then they have the ability as that to then vote and do governance. So when you look at how blockchains are going to need to scale to deal with hundreds of thousands of applications, hundreds of thousands of new games, 50,000 new games being tested on test nets, each week. How do you scale for all of this stuff? And the vision of the Cosmos is we don't have to scale. Build your own dang chain and then just connect it to us. What we'll work on is scaling the connection and scaling the protocol, the IBC, that connects all this information together. You have fundamentally this push for decentralization, open source, open community, cooperation, incentivizing cooperation at every level. And these are designed and built into the software, the soul of it, if you want to call it that. And if you don't think software has a soul, that's fine. I'm not going to argue about this. I build robots all day long. Most of them don't have attitudes. But anyway, but the soul of the architecture of this software is built around this idea of reorganizing stakeholders so they can more effectively change the nature of the state machine of which they are part of. And the Cosmos and Atom is a tool, an organizational value tool, right, to get there. So this has been just a lot of fun to see. It also has things like Chihuahua, which is a useless meme token. It's a meme token. It will eat everything. Memely. Kronos is, you maybe have heard of crypto.org, which is what the CRO stands for, crypto.com, the card, Matt Damon, that's them. Right, they're connected to this ecosystem. Juno, you'll probably hear about soon. But again, these are all, and Terra, Luna, UST. Sentinel now has a whitelisted DVPN application where people can pay for their DVPN application in actually any of these tokens because they're all connected together. Starname is a naming service. There's all sorts of stuff, and these are all connected blockchains with kind of a philosophy, the software to do that. And so that's why the value of this one in particular, right, is doing so well. Because it was built and designed with the notion of that these network effects increase utility. And this next year, this isn't going to be a chart that's got 30. It's going to be a chart that has 100 or 200. So with that, thank you for dropping by again, and I hope this finds you well. Peace out, everybody.